A little further, we are now joined by Ms. Shailaja Chandra, the former secretary at the Ministry of Health. Mr. Dr. Agarwal from IMA will also be joining us. Ma'am, thanks very much for joining us here on India Business Hour. You know, we may quibble about the fact that this was perhaps too extreme a step. We may even talk about under which law, under which rule did the Delhi government actually take a step like this. But the fact of the matter is, where are the regulations governing the private sector hospitals and the private doctors? Something that you have written about extensively. Why don't we have the kind of rules and regulations we need to ensure that these kind of incidents don't get repeated?
See, there is a historical background to this. We did not have any private sector hospitals till when liberalization took place in 1992. At that time, there were a slew of concessions which kept pouring in favor of foreign direct investment into the health sector. And people set up private hospitals with lots of concessions, be it income tax, be it customs, be it land concessions, be it bringing in foreign direct investment, with the result that a number of good hospitals, I mean well-equipped with good specialists, came up. But the fact remains that throughout India, if you look at the NSSO figures, it's not just a question of big hospitals or corporate hospitals or smaller hospitals or single practitioners. The one thing that is missing is the absence of regulation for anyone. Now, if you don't have standards and you don't measure standards, you will never be able to regulate. The Nursing Home Acts are antiquated throughout the country, and Delhi is no exception. I have seen that act. It's a very weak act. And the Clinical Establishments Act was enacted in 2012. The bill was made in 2010. It was passed by Parliament, but it is a model act to be adopted or modified by the state governments. The state governments, however, have not adopted this act either in toto, or even if they have not set up mechanisms, which is rules and staff and inspectors and people to do the actual work of seeing that every single practitioner, public sector, government sector, is registered. If you don't have registration, how do you even take any action against people? That is the crux of the issue.
Ma'am, I get your point.
You don't have a Clinical Establishments Act which is being used. You don't have a regulator.
I get your point, ma'am. And see, this issue of medical negligence isn't something that's new. We have been talking about this for a while. 1.5 million people reportedly have been declared dead as a result of medical errors annually. Why has there been no system that has come out yet? And specifically, who takes the responsibility? Are the state governments responsible over here? Should there not be a larger cohesive system which is looking into the streamlining of these issues in terms of training, in terms of doctor credibility, and so on and so forth?
Of course there should be. You're absolutely right. But the way to do it is, A, for the central government to persuade, and if not persuade, bring it on the concurrent list and enforce that the Clinical Establishments Act is adopted by the states. Number two, the states have to set up a mechanism to use that act. Number three, you have to see that the standards are set out. When a person says, I am delivering services for maternity, or I'm delivering services for cancer, or I'm delivering services for orthopedics, you must have the right kind of doctors. Somebody must be able to look at the quality of the doctors. You can't just put anybody and say that this doctor will handle this. You have people coming out of medical colleges which are third rate. You have people coming in over there whose standards have really been questioned by doctors who are at a higher level. Who is looking at this? This can only be done if you have a regulation agency. Either you need medical tribunals, like you have consumer courts, or you need to have a regulator. If TRAI can have a regulator, if civil aviation has a regulator, electricity has a regulator, why doesn't the health sector have a regulator? The health ministry has tried its best by setting up the Clinical Establishments Act, but it's not being adopted by the states.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, even as far as real estate is concerned, we now have a real estate regulatory authority body. Maybe something the government can think on those lines for the health sector. You know, now the Indian Medical Association, interestingly, is saying, ma'am, that come Monday, they're going to come out with these bold measures and bold steps. Are you a bit suspicious of what IMA is trying to do with this whole attempt at self-regulating, perhaps trying to preempt what the government may do with them?
You see, IMA is a voluntary body. It is a society. It is not under any act at all. It is totally a voluntary organization which registers doctors as members, and they fight elections to become president or secretary general or whatever. It is a body which is somewhat political in nature. They look after doctors' interests. They're not interested in consumers. And therefore, when they say that they're going to take action, it becomes suspect because they don't have the powers to be doing anything except deregistering a doctor from the IMA. But first, the Medical Council of India must stop the license of, take away the license of a doctor who is found to be negligent or complicit in doing something that is against public safety. Medical Council or the state medical councils have not taken appropriate action. If they have, it would be a 0.001% of the cases that are brought to their notice. Public have nowhere to go except the Consumer Act. And the Consumer Act only gives compensation. It does not regulate. It doesn't look.
So we actually do have Mr. K.K. Agarwal joining in. Mr. Agarwal, why don't you respond to the point that Shailja was making right now? Why has the IMA been stalling regulation? Why has the responsibility not been taken by IMA yet?
One thing, let me say, that IMA is concerned about the loss of faith against medical professionals. We are pained. We are with both the families, whether it is Ashish family or whether it is Jayant's family. And I, on behalf of the whole medical profession, apologize to both of them that because of whatever happened, they lost lives and they lost the faith. I also apologize to the whole nation and the community that today we have to defend ourselves. Somewhere we are wrong, we are introspecting. Right away I'm sitting and planning some major decisions and some major announcements which we are going to make it on Monday. I think it's a matter of self-introspection. Yes. The whole community cannot be wrong today. Media is talking against us, the politicians are talking against us, the activists are against us, the bureaucracy is against us.
So nobody is talking against you. The limited point is, sir, nobody is talking against you. The limited point is under which regulation, what regulation covers you. That is the problem. That is the problem. You know,
will come back.
The Indian Medical Association on many occasions, sir, you've been lobbying. Against, to be brought in more regulation. You've lobbied against the Clinical Administrations Act, and that is the point that is being raised this evening.
Listen to me.
Sir, okay, let me just ask a pointed question because we don't have much time right now.
Medical profession is not against accountability.
Ms. Shailja Chandra is on the show, and what she is suggesting, and something that she suggested in the past also, that just in the case of like what we have in the real estate sector and the telecom sector, the health sector today needs a regulator. Just a yes or a no, sir. Will Indian Medical Association even entertain an idea to actually have a regulator that will look into issues of public grievance?
Yes, absolutely. We want a single window regulation for medical profession, doctors, doctors, hospitals, diagnostic center under one roof. We are absolutely for it. If you do a campaign, we are with you.
Do you think that's the answer? Shailja?
That's what everybody wants. You want a single window accountability.
Shailja, single window accountability system, according to K.K. Agarwal, is something that they want to propose as the IMA. Is that enough? Will that work, Shailja?
Yes, why not? No, there's no problem about single window, but it has to be done under the government, and the government has to be the state government. And the Clinical Establishments Act is something that the IMA of the state level has resisted tooth and nail.